Republican incumbent Randy Feenstra is facing two other candidates, Liberty Caucus candidate Bryan Jack Holder and Democrat Ryan Melton. I asked all three why they think that they're the best fit to lead Iowa's 4th District. Here's what Holder had to say.
You may recognize Bryan Jack Holder for his tricorn hat or his signature star-spangled tie. He's a familiar face for many in Iowa's 3rd District, where he's run for Congress 4 times.
I decided to run for Congress for the very first time, just to see what it's like to run for federal office and to give people another choice and another voice in the political process.
This time around, he's running for Iowa's 4th Congressional District, after redistricting moved his home county out of District 3 and into District 4.
Why run for a 5th time?
I did this just as a sort of a exercise in self-government, just to see what it would take to get on the ballot.
A state election law passed last year increased the number of signatures Holder would need to get on the ballot.
I wasn't able to get on the ballot that way, but I conducted a caucus. I ran my own caucus and got on the ballot this way. So it's Liberty Caucus is the name of my political organization.
Besides giving District 4 voters more choice, Holder says he also wants smaller congressional districts and more representation in the U.S. House, structure that has not been changed since 1929.
I propose that to divide the congressional districts into 3 smaller ones, but also divide the salary of our congressperson, divide the staff and the office budget into 3. So the government is not going to grow any bigger, but we're going to have better representation.
And he also wants his campaign to inspire more people to run for office.
But if I can get 5 or 10% of the vote, I think we can get more people involved in the political process once they see that you don't have to be a multimillionaire to run.
And his final pitch, Holder says a vote for him is also a vote for Feenstra and Melton.
If I was elected, I would take Randy and Ryan with me to Washington. You know, we'd get a map out here in Iowa and figure out how best the 3 of us can represent everybody.
Bryan Jack Holder is a lifelong resident of Pottawattamie County. He earned a law degree from Creighton Law School, and he's worked full-time for his family photography business ever since. Yesterday, we introduced you to his opponent, Republican incumbent Randy Feenstra, and we'll bring you more information on the 3rd person in this race, Democrat Ryan Melton, tomorrow at 5. Now, if you miss any of this on air, you can find all of our election coverage online at kcci.com/election 2022. Steve?
Take all you want.
Yes, there's an answer. Thank
Little kids do.
Yeah, that's what changed, right?
Yeah.
Can you see it? Because is my head
House, I think you're going to get a handful.
Yep. Okay, I didn't cut all that. No, okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
People were like, oh yeah, I'm coming out with us. And I think we all the fun places. Country's here, people, yeah. But you know what? We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what eyes are looking at either. That's why we failed that special measure. Honestly, if we, if our goal is not to make everybody love it, we actually go up to values that we agree that we would.
Rick, did you close the sale with this gentleman? Rick, did you close the sale with him?
I think I did.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad. Well, I want to thank you all for coming out here tonight, and thank you for sticking around for the late show. But my name's Bryan Jack Holder. I'm from Bluffs, Iowa. I've lived in Pottawattamie County my entire life. Is this volume okay? And let's see, I went to St. Albert High School, went through public school through the 8th grade, and ended up getting a basketball scholarship at Iowa Western Community College. I didn't play college basketball. I had a spinal injury, so I'm 6'7", and I sort of missed out on a chance to be a college athlete. But I walked on the baseball team at Iowa Western and played there my 2nd year. Finished my degree. I got a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Bellevue University. And then I attended law school at Creighton University. in Omaha, Nebraska, graduated in 1998. So I've always had an interest in history and politics, psychology, current events, but I've spent all my days since graduating from law school as a photographer and a videographer in the family photography business. I produce about 100 events every year. A lot of it's high school sporting events, and I put all this content online for the community. And that's what I love doing. You know, I hate being involved in politics. As an average citizen, though, the amount of effect that we can have on the elections or on policy are greatly improved if you can get on the ballot and run for office. If you join one of the major two parties, you're pretty much going to be stuck with whatever they decide in terms of which candidates they're going to support. Especially the Republican Party is not like grassroots, conservative type candidates because they can't control them. You know, they're not beholden to the special interests that fund the major big ticket, big name candidates. So what's happened in this country is the average citizen like me and you, we've pretty much been priced out of the marketplace of ideas when it comes to campaigning. There's libertarians that have won at the local and county level positions, and you know, that's great, but you see very few independent candidates with no party affiliation that win election at every office. And that's just like Rick spoke about and Ryan spoke about, that the polarization of the electorate over especially the wedge issues is pretty much, it makes you decide just based on that one highly emotional, and like Rick said, it cater to our fears. So, you know, I try not to cater to our fears, I try to cater to our liberties, because I think each one of you in the room here has the right to do what I've done, to run for office, to get on the ballot, and to get up here and discuss whatever issues are going on in the country. But there's so many issues. One of the major things that I focused on since I decided to run for the first time 8 years ago for the U.S. House, but that was in the 3rd Congressional District, and that's the size of the constituency. You know, when some of you leave this university and enter the workforce, you're going to be applying for jobs, and you want to do as much research about the position you're applying for before you apply. Well, I did that 8 years ago. And the first thing that stuck out to me, and I never learned this at Creighton Law School, but they stopped adding seats to the U.S. House roughly about 1929, and they capped it at 435 members. Now, back then, Iowa had 11 congressional districts, but now we only have 4, because since the number of districts was capped, states like Iowa, constituencies keep getting larger and larger and larger. So this 4th district that we're in here has 36 counties. Now the current 4th district has 39 counties. So, you know, 3 counties were taken off and assigned to other congressional districts. But according to the Supreme Court opinion in federal law, each constituency in each state has to be about roughly the same number of constituents. And for us in the 4th, that's about 800,000 constituents. Well, what that means is you've got to get 200,000 votes. And the only way that you can reach that 200,000 vote threshold is to raise millions of dollars, because you're going to have to buy radio ads, TV ads, now you got internet ads, phone banking, texting, and, you know, like Rick says, it's a business. It shouldn't be. Representing the people should not be a business. But, you know, my friend Ryan, I've struck up a friendship with him over the last couple of months, just by giving him a call and talking with him. And I'm so glad that he's running. But, you know, if he hadn't have gotten on the ballot by petition back in March, his party could have nominated him at a special convention, and he wouldn't have had to have gone out and collected 2,000 signatures to get on the primary ballot. That's what his party should have done. But they didn't. They made him sort of, I call it sort of a gang initiation. You know, he had to go out to 18 different counties and talk to complete strangers for them to allow him to run for Congress, and I think that's wrong. But my Republican friends a year ago, they did something similar to me. The previous times I run as a ballot petition candidate, which is Chapter 45 of our election code, As an independent or third-party candidate, I only needed 375 signatures. Well, I did that several times. But in the last 2 elections, for the 3rd district, the Republican nominee lost twice. And I received enough votes to be considered the spoiler. So the Republicans thought I spoiled the election. You know, it's a swing district where the registration is fairly close. But I received 15,000 votes 2 years ago. And that roughly 3.4% of the vote came to me. And David Young lost by a point and a half. So I more than doubled the margin of victory. But there were 12,000 people that voted in that election that took a ballot, and when they voted, they didn't mark any one of us 3, and they didn't write anybody in. That's 12,000 people that said, we're not picking anybody. So arguably, those 12,000 people are the ones that determine the outcome of the election, not me. But, 36 counties, I had to travel around. So since the Republicans increased my ballot access burden by 400% to get through the petitioning process, the other route was through Chapter 44, and what I did was you could either conduct a convention or a caucus. Well, for most of us, a convention is a 1-day event, someplace in a central location where delegates attend. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to conduct a caucus, but I needed, instead of having 50 people in attendance at my caucus, the Republicans raised that 50 to 200 people. So they even made that more difficult. So I thought, you know what, I'm not going to have everybody come to one location. I'm going to open my caucus in December, and I'll just go around meeting with people throughout the district. And, what I had last spring, I had to go get one person in 18 different counties that I've never visited in my entire life to allow me to run for Congress, to do something I've done previously 4 times without having to leave my home community where I have my friends and supporters. So I had to go to some bars up in Okoboji, had to go to a bar in Spencer, went in some businesses, and I went to some businesses up in Sioux Center, Iowa. And there were some people there that wouldn't sign my petition just because that's Randy Feenster's home area. They're friends of his and stuff. And, Rick knows how it is. You just have to explain, well, it's not a vote for me. All it does is allow me to run for office like if you wanted to run for office. The state law forces me to sign your petition. But I'd introduce myself, and then I'd blow the whistle just to get their attention and say the Liberty Caucus is now in session. Thank you for being in attendance at the Liberty Caucus. And then I'd introduce myself, give them a flyer. And most of those people signed my petition. Well, I used them signing my petition as evidence that they were in attendance at my caucus. I also received people's nominations. They attended my caucus through my Facebook page, through my YouTube channel. People were in attendance through a text message, through a phone call. But you have to think outside the box if the ruling establishment wants to suppress your voice and third-party voices and independent voices. So I got on the ballot. I was hoping my Republican friends would object to the way that I conducted my caucus so that we could have had an objection hearing, but they failed to take the bait. I put a bunch of cheese on a big trap for my Republican friends. That giant elephant didn't take the cheese, which is okay. 2 years ago, I got on the ballot through the petitioning process, and the Republicans, Mike Nagg, who's our current Secretary of Agriculture, his campaign manager filed an objection to my petitions, claiming that this person who lived at this address was not associated with that property. They were all frivolous, arguments that held no water. So he objected. Secretary Paul Page is required by state law to give me an objection hearing within a week. So I was objected to at the end of March. Secretary Page didn't give me my objection hearing until August. So that's 5 months. He violated state law, and I have a cause of action for him violating state law and violating my rights, because by him failing to certify my name and not giving my objection hearing, he basically hamstrung my congressional race 2 years ago, because my name was not certified as an official candidate until the end of August. Well, you need to be out there raising money if you're going to do that. I don't do that. I haven't, I've considered it, but In the federal race, if you raise more than $5,000, you have to form a committee, and then you have to start filling out tax forms and sending them to the Federal Election Commission. And, you know, if Libertarian's a third party, you're going to get, and in this race, there's not enough votes out there for me to justify, you know, asking you for campaign contributions. Because if I'm going to do that, I'd like to have a chance to win. But what I am doing is advocating for smaller constituencies. Like I said, it's been 100 years since they stopped adding seats to the U.S. House. The population of America has tripled, so I call it the Iowa Compromise. And it's funny how the mainstream media, they'll interview me about the dividing the district into three, but they don't often print the words Iowa Compromise. It's as if they're afraid of that phrase. And I'm trying to remind people of the Missouri Compromise and the Compromise of 1850. These were compromises that our Congress made to prevent civil war. Now, I don't think someday we're going to line up in fields, the blue and the gray, and sludge out with mini balls. But I can see that the electorate is so deeply polarized. There's some people that hate each other just because of their party affiliation or who they voted for president. And what so many of us fail to realize is those people elected to those federal offices have so much money and power and connections. We're so far below them is how they look at us. You know, I don't like to speak bad of people that aren't here to defend themselves, but Congressman Feenstra had the opportunity to speak at the Iowa State Fair. He could have had 18 or 20 minutes to speak there, whatever issue he wanted. He turned that down. He also was invited to a debate on Iowa Public Television, and he turned that down. And last I checked, he hasn't accepted an invitation to speak here. So if you're afraid to come out or you're fearful of speaking and maybe having people question the way you voted in the past, you shouldn't apply for that job and get elected and go to that legislature to do that. So, but you know, I think if we have smaller districts, more of us can run, but we'll have better representation. You know, there's 36 counties in this district, and if I was elected, I would do several things so that you guys have the best representation possible. The first of is Randy and Ryan. We would represent you together. We would be at the table. I've said to the media before, to KCCI, we get a map out and figure out how we can best represent everybody in this district. Because if I'm from Council Bluffs, I know what's going on down in southwest Iowa. I don't know what's going on up here in central Iowa or in northwest Iowa. It's just there's too many communities. And some of these communities, with having the district so big, is the people of the communities have interests and legislative priorities that are adverse to one another. So there's always a built-in conflict of interest when you have the districts too big. And on top of the conflict of interest, that I think our representative should be a fiduciary. You know, you have a duty of trust and a duty of loyalty. And when you're in public office, you shouldn't benefit from that office in any way outside of whatever salaries you pay for. Because what happens is, the way they do things now, they take the money from the big donors and the corporations and stuff, and then that allows us to question their motive. And I don't like to question people's motives, but I will question the way that they don't represent us properly. And in some states, we have the gerrymandering problem, where they can divide the districts and curve it this way and that way. In Iowa, it's okay for our state senators and state representatives to represent people in different counties. They divide up counties for the General Assembly, but state law says you can't divide up a county for a congressional district. Well, that means counties that are on the edge of the district every 10 years, like Pottawattamie, we run the risk of being thrown into another district where we don't have much things in common other than we're fellow Iowans with people in other communities. So in Council Bluffs, one of the biggest concerns is the Missouri River, because we've almost lost the city of Council Bluffs several times in the last decade through the flooding. So managing that river is a very high priority for the people up there. But, you know, I've asked public TV multiple times to be included in their debates, but every 2 years they exclude me from the debate because I'm not with the Republican or Democratic Party, and because I don't raise $50,000 to run for Congress. Those are some of the criteria they've set up. Another criteria that they've set up is you have to get 5%, and now they've raised it to 10% for this election cycle in a public opinion poll, and it has to be an independent public opinion poll. So you, the candidate, or your party can't pay for the poll, otherwise it's illegitimate. But the polls never include me. So how am I supposed to get 10% of zero? That seems like a sort of a farcical, unrealistic criteria. And I'm going to sue public television this election cycle. It may be after the election's over. But the reason they exclude me and other candidates is in 1992, an actual American Nazi ran for Congress in the state of Arkansas. I know that's hard to believe that there's someone with racist thoughts down south, but he was not allowed on Arkansas public television, and so he sued. The district court thought he should have been included in the debate. The appeals court, can't remember which way they ruled. Anyway, the case went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they determined I don't call them rulings anymore, even though I'm a law school graduate. I call them opinions. They're opinions of 5 to 9 human people. You know, you need 5 for a majority, but sometimes the best arguments are in the minority opinions. But the opinion stated that public TV can create reasonable, objective criteria to exclude certain candidates. And they use a measure of newsworthiness as one of the criteria to be included in the debate. Now, that maybe it held some water 30-some years ago, the newsworthiness thing, but with social media, it allowed any candidate like me to establish an audience and to provide content and to get people to see what you're doing. And the news stations are taking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in advertising money from these candidates. So they have a conflict of interest themselves in who they report on. And so a good measure of whether I trust a media organization or not is whether they mention my name in a story about the campaign I'm running in. And there's some, like Iowa Public Television, that my friend Bryan talked about. He was on Iowa Press a week ago on Friday night, and they said he's running to challenge Randy Feenstra. Well, they didn't mention my name, that there's a third candidate running a 5th time. And the reason they do that is they want to suppress dissenting opinions and other voices. And so what I did on Friday was I had 1 week to ask for equal time and equal opportunity, 30 minutes on Iowa Public Television. They haven't responded yet, and it's Monday night, so I probably gave their lawyers something to think about over the weekend, and they were probably doing some research. But technically, they can exclude me just because the Communications Act of 1934, they made some amendments to it in the 50s and 60s, and they said that if it's a bona fide news interview, then we don't have to give the other candidates equal time. Well, I have a hard time believing it's a bona fide news interview when you, as the network, invite the candidate to come, you give them 30 minutes, you don't mention the other candidate in the race. The first rule of journalism, and I'm not a journalist, I'm a citizen journalist, but I never went to J school. But the first rule is to tell the truth. So, if you're not informing the people of Iowa that they have 3 choices in a race, or 4 choices, or 5, you're failing in the first clause of their mission statement. Is Iowa Public Television is here to educate and inform us. You know, they're part of the Iowa Department of Education. So, and I've addressed the public television board just like I'm talking with you and asked them to modify their debate inclusion criteria. They failed to do that. The legislature is never going to rein them in. But, you know, I don't like paying taxes to a state television network when my opponents are getting free airtime. Because I think I have better ideas than them in terms of how we should be represented with smaller constituencies. The other thing is that, you know, there's the war in the Ukraine, our money, the purchasing value of the dollar is greatly depreciating through inflation. There's so many of these other problems, but unless we get involved and go to town halls like this, go to legislative coffees, and do some research on your state representatives, your state senators, your congressmen, find out what they voted on, where they stand on certain issues. You know, I used to vote for Republicans just over the gun issue as the gun rights, but I stopped doing that in 2014 when I ran for Congress the first time, because you know, I'm not interested in Second Amendment remedies like some of these right-wingers are. I'm interested in First Amendment remedies. You know, as Justice Louis Brandeis wrote in one of his opinions, and he's one of my favorite justices, the remedy to be applied is more speech, not enforced silence. You know, silencing people just because you don't agree with them, they've already won the argument if you have to muzzle them so that they can't get their opinion out there. So, but that's just me. I don't ask for money, I don't ask for votes, but I want you all to be aware of the fact that there's another choice on the ballot. I wear the tri-corner hat just to stand out, to get people's attention. You know, when you're running for office and petitioning, your time is limited, so you need to have somebody see your hat, and if they don't like the hat or your shirt, they're not going to sign, which is great, because I may attract the attention of someone that may be willing to sign my petition. But I wore this shirt at the state fair, and I put my name on it just so that I have how I'm going to mark my ballot on, you know, on my chest. And I wish more candidates would wear their own campaign t-shirts, but the way they do things, they either hire people or have their staffers put on their campaign shirts. And if any of you have ever gone around someone in a position of political power, it can be real intimidating, because a lot of them, they put off this aura of superiority and invincibility. But, you know, if you ever feel weird around them, it's because they're sociopaths. So there's too many sociopaths and psychopaths in government. And if I was your representative, like I said, I would divide the district up, but I would do something additional. I would poll the constituents so that you guys have as much decision-making power as I would have in Congress. You know, I want to have an app so that you can vote yes or no, or maybe, or give me more information. But our national legislature sort of legislates from emergency to emergency. And this brinksmanship, it doesn't work, you know, and then they never resolve certain issues. I turned 50 in a little bit over a month, and I'd sort of like some of these issues to be put to bed so we get them resolved. But you guys, we've got how much time you want to ask any questions.
Yeah, so campaigning is a lot of work, right?
It is.
And
The Koch brothers did not pay me to come up here tonight.
they didn't. I'll write it. So, you know, I'm the kind of guy who always thinks that if work isn't fun, I shouldn't have to do it. And I know you're not getting paid to do it. So, is work fun for you, campaigning? Do you enjoy going out there and doing all the stuff, even the dirty
You
stuff?
know, like tonight, I enjoy filming Ryan's presentation and filming yours more than I enjoy standing up here and stuff. But since it's the 5th time I've run for U.S. House, I've run for Iowa House twice, Iowa Western Community College Board of Trustees. I almost screwed up and won that election a year ago, so I could have been on the board of directors there. But, you know, no, it's not easy. I don't really enjoy it, just because you have to talk about things that some of us find distasteful, you know, like the oppressive nature of government. And, you know, I'm no fan of hierarchies of any kind. I know any organization, it gets to a certain point, you need to have levels of decision-making and stuff, but if you're a congressman or a state rep or state senate, it should be the easiest job in the world. Just count your constituents' votes and communicate with them. The type of representation I would give you is, I tell people, I don't want to be the judge, I don't want to be the lawyer, I want to be like the jury for them, where we all get to look at the evidence, you know, evidence being the bill presented before the legislature. We look at the pros and cons, what are the good things that might happen, what are the bad things. And that way we're all fully informed citizens. and these decisions that are being made. But then, you have to get into the conversation of should the majority rule apply every time? We have a constitutional republic, a democratic republic, but the revolution was fought over the Bill of Rights. It wasn't fought over the federal income tax. So that we have all these unalienable rights that the government is never supposed to violate, like the right to petition your government for redress of grievances, like I do. But if we don't talk about this stuff, Rick, and get more of us involved and inspire other people to get involved, we're just going to be stuck with a two-party system. And then the party out of power blames the party in power for everything. They sort of wash their hands and say, well, we don't have the votes, and they're in charge. And then it goes back the other way. And I've seen this over the last 30 years, the Congress, controlling Congress going back and forth, so. Yeah.
All right, now I'm going to throw you a
Well, hold on, he's got a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So Brian, what do you have in mind for the optimum number of congressional districts, and how do you just pick that? You can specify a certain population?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. No one ever does. I think we need to have this discussion before we would decide, how big a constituencies should be. I've thought of the idea maybe each county in Iowa, there's like a sub-representative of the congressional district that stays in the county to help with the legislative needs of the people in the community, with the constituent services. But I know as it current stands, in the 3rd district, Congressman Axne, she's using the same office in Council Bluffs that Congressman Young had. She's using the same office in Creighton, Iowa, and I'm not sure she has the same office in Des Moines. So basically, David and Cindy had 3 offices in the district. Randy, I think, only has 2 in the 4th. Well, that just sort of proves my point. Maybe we should have 3 people elected to represent those portions. And it's interesting, the map of the congressional districts in Iowa from 100 years ago when we had 11 districts. Southwest Iowa, I think it only had like 9 counties in that congressional district. I don't feel very comfortable representing people in that part of the state not just because I run, but in my work as a videographer, I film a lot of basketball and football games in Southwest Iowa. So the community, the kids, the parents know me. I just want to empower them to vote yes or no. But then we can talk about what it would cost, in terms of expanding the number of seats. Maybe they don't even have to go to Washington. Maybe they can all stay and vote by proxy, which Cindy Axne has done. There's all sorts of creative ways to. Another thing that I would want to do is to get all the elected officials in each county to vote for or against the bills in Washington. Because these people at the local level were elected by the Republican and Democratic parties. Let's make them take ownership of what's going on in Washington. Because it's sort of analogous to 100 years ago when the state legislature picked the state or the U.S. senator that they sent to Washington. But I just, like I said, I hate doing it. I film all my speeches and public appearances and stuff, not because I'm narcissistic, it's because I want a recording of what I said, so that and I'm going to put this on my YouTube channel and Facebook, but if some Republicans want to take what I said out of context, that's fine. I got the whole tape. Now I filmed it for Ryan, not to catch him in anything, but his party should have had somebody here with a tripod and a couple of video cameras to record his presentation. I'm friends with Rick, and I'm here as a libertarian. I'm still registered libertarian, but I couldn't run as a libertarian on the ballot because of the fact that they changed those ballot access laws. But having recordings of stuff, if we were at a different location here on campus, where there was more people, I would have told everybody, hey, get your phone out, text your friends, tell them to come on down, and they can, talk with a congressional candidate and learn some things that they probably haven't learned about the structure of our current government. So, sorry, did I answer your question? Okay.
Sounds like roughly tripling, maybe.
Yeah, roughly tripling, divide by 3. The population has tripled. But, there's states like Wyoming where they have 1 U.S. rep, and it turns a state like that into statewide race if you want to win Congress, which the bigger the jurisdiction or the constituency, the more it's going to cost you to win because you got to reach more voters. So one thing we can do to save the taxpayers of Iowa, I haven't crunched the numbers, but in Pottawattamie County, it costs us $75,000 to run a primary election. Well, why should I have to pay for the Republicans to win a primary or the Democrats? Because I can't participate in their primary. And if somebody doesn't get 35% in a legislative race for either Congress or the state general assembly, it goes to a special convention of the party insiders anyway. And the outsiders, you know, if you go to the Iowa Caucus and get credentialed as a delegate, and then you didn't get credentialed as a delegate to the county convention or to the congressional district convention, you don't get to vote on David Young being your nominee. That's how David Young won his nomination 8 years ago. He came in 5th out of 6 candidates in the 3rd congressional district GOP primary. But then 500 GOP insiders, central committee members. These are the radical, rabid people. I used to be one of them. But you know, you go to the county party meetings every month. Well, then you have to ask to go to the county convention and onto the district convention. But it amplifies your voting power when they have those special conventions. So why should we have to pay for it? They can get their own candidates. They conduct the Iowa caucuses themselves. You know, us taxpayers. And I didn't cost anybody in this room or any taxpayer of Iowa anything for me to get my name on the ballot through a caucus process. So it could be $20 million. I don't know, $10 million. But it's still our money. So.
Yeah, I think it segues quite nicely into his question about how many it should be. As I sit here and think about it, why do we even give them an office in Washington?
Right.
What they get is they get an office space.
Yes.
I think we have office space in Iowa. And they get a staff.
Right.
There's no reason for that staff to be in Washington.
Right.
They could be here in Iowa, contributing to our local economy.
Yeah.
Obviously, the congressperson it would be much easier to meet more items. If there were 3 instead of 1, it would be even easier.
Right.
I get it, you know, maybe once a quarter or twice a year they could go to Washington. They wouldn't have to take their staff because,
Right.
you know, they can talk to their staff on the phone. They'd stay in a hotel, they'd conduct their weekend business, and then they'd come back to Iowa and be closer to the people that they're actually representing.
Right.
Because if you look at the, quote, debates, excuse my cough, in the actual Congress itself,
Yes.
inside, that does nothing to contribute to the decision-making process. It's just a theater.
It's political theater.
Yeah, it's just theater, and,
That's what this is too, but I'm on a smaller stage, so.
So why would we not just say, wait a second, we can save a lot of money and bring the Congress people closer to their own constituents, which is after all who they represent, save that travel time, and just say you can do it from home.
Did you say who they represent? Did you say Pfizer? Did you say Monsanto? Did you say McDonnell Douglas? No.
If your headquarters or if your district, if you represent.
Yeah, I think they like the swamp because that's where they all go to get corrupted.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of them, if they weren't corrupt before they went there, they are after they get there. Because if, you know, you heard Bryan talking about the Washington campaign managers, you know, wanting to take over his campaign and raise a bunch of money and stuff. There's so much of that going on, plus with the lobbyists.
Well, the other advantage would be that the lobbyists would have to come down.
Right, yeah, make the lobbyists travel here.
Yeah, let's not make it easy on them.
Let's employ some more lobbyists, but,
I'm actually a fan of lobbyists, but we shouldn't make it super simple for them to, because a lobbyist just represents a lot of other people.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But when they're all concentrated in the same place, it's, you know, power corrupts. And
Oh, yeah.
that's where the power is.
yeah, and I've got friends, Democratic friends, that advocate for further restrictions on campaign financing in terms of who can subsidize whose campaign. You know, I'm fine with things as long as it's all transparent and stuff. But my biggest thing is, like Bryan said, let's just sort of have more debates. Let's sort of mandate that the candidates that are running get invited to the debates so that you guys can figure out who's got the best ideas and who's going to represent us best. You know, but you know, you leave out, in 2018, there were 6 candidates that ran for Congress in Iowa's 3rd Congressional District, and only the Republican and Democrat got most of the media coverage and were on TV, on public TV, but in 2018 and 2020, I was in a congressional debate. They call it a forum, but it was a debate on the radio in KMA in Shenandoah, Iowa. And so I got to sit there with David and Cindy and discuss these issues and answer the questions. But, you know, the major party candidates cannot help themselves to criticize the other one and call them out for something they did, and then they get back and forth arguing. The media loves that. They just eat that up. And some people watching do like that too. You know, I don't argue with the fellow candidates. I'm here to discuss ideas. And, you know, I'd like Randy to say, Bryan, that would never work. I've been to Washington. There's no way you could double or triple the size of the U.S. House. It would never work. And I'd say, Randy, let's try something else. Let's at least try it, because the way things are going, you guys had thousands of people that crashed the Capitol. You know, that we can't ever have that happen again. And I know my friends on the right say, oh, it was just a little tussle, and I've got friends on the left say it was an insurrection. They tried to overthrow the government. All I know is it was a mess. There were people injured, people hurt, but most of all, it further fuels the lack of trust in our elections. And I'll leave you with this one last thing, is that in 2016, I received 15,372 votes. In 2020, I received 15,360 votes. So I'm thinking to myself, where are those 12 people? Did they move out of the 3rd district? Did they pass away? But you just look at the raw numbers, and you know, I was a psychology major. I got A's, only math class I ever got A's in was statistics. And that's just an anomaly to get almost the exact same number of votes twice. And this is after, you know, over 15,000 people had voted. So I don't know if the elections are rigged, but I knew that my results were real consistent. So consistent that it's something that maybe a computer algorithm would look at and make it that consistent. So, okay, yeah. All right, well, I want to thank you guys for coming out here and bearing with us. I'm sorry I couldn't draw a bigger crowd, but, you know, if I do this again, maybe I'll light myself on fire next time and we can get a real big crowd here. I know some Republicans will probably want to light up some hot dogs and marshmallows, but
They'll buy the gas.
they'll pay for the gasoline. So, all right, thank you guys.
Thanks, Bryan.
Thank you.
Totally appreciate it.